Dr. Koach Baruch Frazier, thank you for joining us again this week on TribeHerald.
It's my pleasure. So excited.
So this week, Parshat Beshalach, we are talking about leaving Egypt. We're talking about the redemption from Egypt. We're talking about the end of 210 years of slavery. Which are some things that, jump out to you about this week's Parsha?
What I think is super interesting is that we get this, what I'm describing as a birthing story. And this comes through my brother Gray. He talks about how this is not only a story about redemption, but also about how a new people is literally being born and coming through the water sack, right? The birthing sack of the Reed Sea, right? Or the Sea of Reeds, and like just bursting forth into this wilderness of like what do they do now? Like, and as a kid, you're gonna be, or like a baby, you're experiencing the world anew, right? Like you don't know, like there aren't words as a baby for how to get fed. You make a lot of noise, and that's exactly what we see happening in the story. The people, as they come out, there's all this uncertainty. There's all these new things. I don't have to be ruled. I'm not being ruled by Pharaoh. I'm being ruled by God in this wilderness, kind of just with this ragtag group of people. And this is a whole new experience, and I've got to figure life out now. So you get them complaining and, crying out, why don't we have water? Why don't we have food? But that's what babies do. And I love this frame because it actually, not that they need any compassion, but it actually allows us to find ourselves in the story, to think through what it is to be kind of a new being in the world and experiencing it for the first time and trying to wrap your head around, how do I survive? How do I survive? And I think that's part of what we're seeing here in the story.
And this is a group of people who are coming into freedom for the first time.
That's right.
They're coming into their own for the first time, like where they're not being ruled over by an external force. Do you think that this is like that these are connected? This idea of coming into freedom and becoming a people at the same time.
Yes. I mean, whenever one has come through a point of restriction, right? Like their own Mitzrayim. Like you're literally kind of born anew into life, because you no longer have this constriction on you. And so that, yes, like when you are free of whatever it is that has kept you in chains or bondage, or whether that is physical or metaphysical, that you are a new person, and that freedom allows you to move differently in the world, allows you to set up new boundaries for yourself, allows you to decide on like who is going to be in your life and how you interact with them. And that's exactly what we see happening in this story, right? Because again, like we are told that this is a mixed multitude. So this might not just be the Hebrews who experienced slavery. These might have been other people inside of the Egyptian culture and environment who came with them, who are also acclimating themselves to not being in Mitzrayim. So like this is a whole new world, right? To take the line out of that that horrible film. It's a whole new world, right?
Well, that's an interesting point, though, because at least for the Hebrews, they had been told there'd been a tradition for the entire time that they were in Egypt that eventually there's going to be a redeemer, somebody's going to come and take you out. But for the rest of the mixed multitude, this was a completely new experience for them. Like they had no frame of reference.
Right. And also like they're still getting to know Moshe, right? Who is this guy? And who are you speaking for? Because, okay, we're no longer in Egypt, but we ain't had water for 3 days. Hold on. Who is this guy that you say we supposed to follow? Where we ain't got no food. So like they're still kind of trying to come into knowing Moshe as a leader and as someone they're supposed to be following. And also like how do we sustain ourselves? Because I think about our system now, right? Hopefully we'll be on the other side of white supremacy, white nationalism, Christian nationalism, like name all the things, patriarchy, transphobia, homophobia, sexism, all of it. one day we'll be on the other side of that. But what is that thing? Like, how do we set ourselves up so that we do not only survive, but thrive? And what are the systems that need to be in place so that we can be in right relationship with each other? And I think, like, when we look at how even they set up in terms of the food distribution, that you're supposed to come and get what you need and only what you need, not to get more, and to eat it that day. Don't try to keep the stuff from the day before, because there's going to be something new for you the next day, right? So there's just this, we are getting the lessons of abundance and how not to be in this scarcity mode, which is what a person who's been enslaved might have, right? I got to take everything I got or get everything I can because I don't know if something's coming next. And this is the mindset that I think that we're trying to move ourselves out of, like in terms of how we even think about mutual aid, right? That I don't have control over what somebody else gets. They get what they need. I put my money or my resources into the pot, and somebody else gets to grab what they need, and then they put in what they need in the pot. Now, these are systems that are being put into place now, like in an international pandemic, right? A global pandemic. We need systems that will help us be in right relationship with each other so that we can survive this. And I think that we're getting some of that here in the portion.
And you know, there's that element of faith and trust that, you know, you have to believe that the food's going to be there the next day. Like, yes, you saw it yesterday. Yes, you see it today, but will it be there tomorrow? You've got to believe that.
That's right.
You know, trust and faith.
That's right. And it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear because you get to in the story that people are like, okay, they first of all, they saved it for the next day, and what happened? It's spoiled, right? They couldn't even eat it. They couldn't eat it. Stinky and it was spoiled. They couldn't even eat it. And then you get that command that on the sixth day, have faith enough that I'm going to give you double portion. So on the seventh day, you can actually like sit down and rest, right? And be still. And you have folks like, I don't trust that. So they went out and they didn't find nothing, right? But that is just, we have to constantly be in that mode of practicing what it is to not feel like there's never going to be enough. Because in fact, the truth is there is enough. The systems that we have in place don't allow for everyone to experience that abundance and enoughness. And let us learn how to create systems that perpetuate abundance and not scarcity.
It seems like that before we can get to that point, like, you know, of these past few parshas, the Hebrew people have become very close-knit as a community. Mm-hmm. They've painted blood on their doorposts. They've, you know, distinguished themselves from the Egyptians. This idea of, you know, interconnectedness. Mm-hmm. This was a very tight group of people who crossed the sea together. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, you know, these are the same people who are looking out for each other now.
Yes. It all starts with a relationship. There is absolutely no way for us to be in a trusting, dare I say, secure partnership with other people unless there is this relationship that we can build upon, that we have done things together, been through something together. And Lord knows we've been through some stuff. I think part of what our problem now is that, you know, just trying to establish relationships with our own neighbors, right? The people we live next to, the people we go to the grocery store with, the people we go to shul with. It's everything appears to be so transactional in our society, but that's on purpose, right? That's a part of capitalism. And so what we have to do is just we have to push back against that narrative and at least try our best to be in some kind of less than or more than transactional relationship with the people that we live with in our communities. This also is that is what foundational to abolition. The only way to get past these systems that are actually created for us to just be seen as capital, right, is to actually build human relationships and relationships with other beings in this world. I think one of the things, Tu B'Shvat is coming up, and right. need to find this rabbi's name. He said that one of the things that we have to do on Tu B'Shvat is that we have to actually connect to the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and actually kind of beam out that presence of that life force to every being on this planet, whether they're animate or inanimate, right? And in order to do that, like, we got to take ourselves out of the picture of thinking we're the only ones, and to really kind of see and know that we are deeply connected to all beings on this planet.
And that's, Adam ish eitz hasareh, the person is like a tree in the field. That idea that, human beings are just as connected to nature as any other animal is.
That's right. And you think about it, when in this portion, you get the part where the waters were bitter. And what did Moshe do? Moshe takes a piece of that tree and sweetens the water, right? That we are deeply connected to just even how one part of nature, it has an effect on the other part of nature that can allow us to have sustenance. So just thinking of, even in this portion, we get so many connections to just how connected we are to nature, and how, and when we are doing it right, when we are in right relationship with nature, that we can be in that cycle of sustenance and also renewal.
And it seems like, we're now coming to the end of a number of generations where we haven't been so right with nature. We haven't done so well by the earth, by the climate and things like that. There's also that element of tikkun, like we have to fix nature, fix what we've done bad to nature.
Right. And you get this, I hope I can find it quickly. There's that part where Hashem says, I need you to do some things. I need you to get right with yourself, with me. And when you do that, I will not plague you like I did in the Egyptians. And God announces that I am Hashem, I'm Yudhe, and I am your healer, right? So there's this notion of God is like, okay, there's some things that are up for healing for all of us. And part of it is that now you are on the other side of slavery, oppression, degradation, and inhumanity, that now you're moving towards freedom and connecting to your humanness and to nature and all of this, that there are systems, there are rules for this. And when you do that, you will see the healing come forth, because I'm your healer.
We have a lot of mitzvahs that are going to come connected to nature. Shemitah, Peah, leaving the corner of your land fallow, Teruma, giving the first Maser. Like there's a lot of mitzvahs that come out of this relationship to the land and relationship to nature.
That's right.
Do you think that there's something that we can learn from that as being non-agrarian people? Like, at the time, they were literally growing out of the land. But here, most of us live in cities, things like that. What are some things you think we can learn from this relationship with nature?
Well, part of it is that nature, just like us, needs rest. And, you think about Shemitah, and also even here, where God's like, sit down now. Don't go outside. Like, sit in your house. There's something about allowing the land to actually just be. And we need to do that. Even like I have a garden, in my little front yard here, and it needs time to rest. You can't keep growing and growing and growing and expect that it's gonna actually continue to yield things. And then in terms of Peah, none of this belongs to us. None of this belongs to us. All of this is shared resources that are here for us to actually take, but also to give, right? And so when you see people who are in need, you can just come let them pick what they need, right? You're not supposed to just tell them, oh, well, I'm gonna give you this. So I'm gonna tell you what we did. We got a very small, I got two little small raised beds. And what we did is when the neighbors came by and they was like, can we have some? Of course you can. Like, this is not mine. And we, and again, we also, I'm thinking of my teacher, Leah Perlman, who owns Soul Fire Farm, right? Another Black Jewish woman, and she says we ought to be saying the planting prayers, the planting songs, right? And it's all mixed into our year cycle, right? We think of the prayers of Sukkot, and you think of the prayers of Sukkot and Shavuot and Pesach, right? Like we're thinking about like how we're entering into particular points in the year that have to do with our planting and harvesting, right? And that those are moments in which pilgrimages were supposed to be made, that tithes were made, so that we accounted for our not ownership, our ability to share what we have, because it's not ours.
Right.
It belongs to all of us.
Was it La Hashem Haaretz Umloah? Like the world and all of its fullness belongs to Hashem. It doesn't belong to us. We're just
not a thing. We're
just guardians, stewards. We're just working this. This is not. We don't have any ownership over here.
That's right. And that's something that the Bnei Yisrael are learning, right? Because they're in a new space. They didn't have that kind of agency before. When you're oppressed and you're under siege, you don't have agency to think through like, how do I take care of my little bit? Because you don't have a little bit, right? But now that you have the expanse of this land, you have to do your due diligence and take care of it.
But there's also that humbling experience too, because one could think like, all right, I'm out of slavery. I got this. This is all me. We are going to go and conquer something. And it's like, no, Hashem's like, I give you food daily on a daily basis. No, you don't know where your water's coming from. No, you don't know where the food's coming from. You know, that building that on a basis of like almost ego-free living.
Mm-hmm. But that's how we do with babies, right? Like, okay, you say you're hungry, but I got this little bit for you today. Got this little for a couple hours, and then we'll see how you do, and then we give you a little bit more, then we give you a little bit more, and and after a while, then you get the agency to figure out, okay, no, I like this. I like peas more than I like carrots. I like, like we get a chance to have a deeper say in what's happening. But when you see this as like, oh, right, these are little kids growing up. They need some assistance. And that's what God is doing. And, I love also that the rabbis took this notion of being 3 days without water, of saying that we actually now, our Torah readings, like we don't go without Torah for more than 3 days, right? And I love this. And I think through, like, even now, like as we are in the midst of this pandemic and all of the things that have been happening in our country and abroad, like thinking how hard it is to kind of stay connected to Hashem, to source, to the universe, to at least, if you can't do it every day, to not let yourself go 3 days without finding some kind of spiritual connection, so that you are nourished and you have enough to like get you going until the next time. Don't allow yourself to go without for more than 3 days. I think that's that's a beautiful spiritual insight, and I'm really happy that they pulled that out of that story.
Anytime you see Torah, anytime you see water in the Torah, that's an allegory for Torah itself. Because Torah is, life-giving and all of that, just like water would be in the wilderness. As the people are transitioning, though, into freedom, the one thing that we find that these people just do not have is faith. We find, we miss the gourds in Egypt. We miss the flesh pots in Egypt. We miss this from Egypt. We miss that from Egypt. Why do you think there's so much, attachment to one's former place of oppression?
You can count on it. There's something to be said for consistency and being able to say, I can count on being a slave, but I can also count on getting food, and I can count on getting my water, and I can count, I can count on Pharaoh being, a hard butt to us,
even though you're being oppressed, even though you're
That's right. I mean, you think about you think about even as slavery ended here in the United States, and how there were some people who were like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do if I can't count on this person to provide for me? Because you are now in this kind of really abusive, dependent relationship. And so tearing away from that is such a hard thing. And I actually have empathy for people who, like, I think about people who are in abusive relationships, and they're like, at least I can count on, like, I know I got a roof over my head. It may be abusive, but I stay here because it's consistent. I know I don't have, like, my whole world will be completely in disarray should I leave. And so just thinking about, like, how do we support people who are going through something that, like, they wish to come out on the other side of it, but it just is so hard. How do we provide support so that people can make the decision to leave that which no longer serves them and go to something that actually will? So I think that's what I'm reading from this story, that, like, sometimes it's hard to have faith in something you just don't know, but you have more faith in things you know. And maybe if we give people the support to have something different to know, that they will leave that and move on.
Right. And that takes a leap of faith. And
yes,
to leave that abusive relationship, to say, like, there is something better for me. I just have to believe that it exists.
That's right. That's right. And, like, there's got to be some proof somewhere, right? And here, there's really, like, they got the whole, the proof was, I took you out of Egypt, right? Like, that's the constant reminder that we have. I took you out of Egypt. But then what? Right? Like, so I'm looking for the next thing that's gonna, like, hold as the trust building thing for me. I think my brother Gray said, Brene Brown talks about trust being a container of marbles, and that, like, you trust is like trying to get, every time I'm building trust with you, I put a marble in the container. But unless I got this, container of marbles to look at, I don't know, like, where have I been able to trust you, right? And so with God here, like, I feel like the marbles ain't maybe half full yet. Like, like we just got a few marbles in there. So we gotta build the faith muscle and build up the marbles in the trust container so that we can have that faith. Maybe because taking a leap of faith is moving into the unknown, but there has to be something within you that, like, knows. And sometimes it's like a glimpse. Maybe it's just a glimpse of, like, oh, I can feel it. I can see it on the other side of me. But sometimes it's like, nah, I see my other friend go. I see, I see somebody else. Like, I saw the other family go there and get some food outside the tent. So maybe I can go and get some too, right?
And this is going to be a recurring theme through pretty much the rest of the Torah. Like, the book of Numbers by Midbar is all about this. Like, and the people complained, and the people cried to Moshe, and the people complained, and the people cried to Moshe. It takes it took generations for us to really get out of that slave mentality.
Yeah. And it's gonna take us generations to get out of this racial, capitalist, white supremacist mindset. Because just think about it. Just think about it. 10 years ago, they were 15 in a union was a thing. We need $15 an hour 10 years ago, and we ain't made it there. How many years will it take for us to understand that people need a livable wage? How many? How many generations do we have to go through? How many generations will we have to go through in order to understand that wearing a mask is not a political statement, that it's about helping keep the rest of us alive? This isn't the first time this happened. This happened back in 1918, right? How many generations of pandemic do we need to go to? How many generations of race riots and, and immigration and all of these things that continually cycle through based off of the capitalist system we live in? How many generations do we have to go through before we get out of this mindset that this is the only thing that's here? This is all we got.
Right. How many generations have we gone through?
Okay.
Right, exactly. Oh.
We got a long way to go. And I feel like we following our people here. We need systems. Like we got a blueprint here. We need systems that's gonna help us. And also what we learned at the end of the portion, right? With this war of against Amalek, which is really a family situation, okay? That sometimes we warn with ourselves, right? That somehow, even as we are on the other side of oppression, that we're gonna bump up against that which we were oppressing before, right? Just thinking of the generations of Yaakov and Esau, right? And how there was a bumping up against in that siblinghood. I mean, they were warring in the womb.
Literally.
So the fact that they warring here, that makes sense to me. But also, aside from that, we look at how talk about setting up a system that that Joshua and her were holding up Moshe's hands. That there's something about we are sharing our ability to lead, and that sometimes we got to step back and say, you know what, I need help, and we're going to get that next portion too, right? But there's something about like being modeled for us that we have to be able to count on each other, and that yes, we're gonna get tired because this is a lot of work to do, and also we have to support each other in this work, so that when we need rest or we need help holding our hands up so that we can continue to fight, that we know that there's people who got our back and our front and our side.
Right. And that's that whole interconnectedness, being able to rely on members of your community.
Yes. And who are those supports for us? Who are those supports for us? These are like questions I have. Like, I want to know, like, are we searching out? Do we know who our support system is? And because things are going to come, it's going to be hard. We're going to bump up against the things that either we did in the past or things that are that will be introduced to in the future. But having a support system we need that. Absolutely.
And I think we're going to have to end it on that note. We've been talking for a half hour already. Thank you again for this week.
Hey, it's been so wonderful. I really appreciate this.